Hi, welcome to Deliberate Leaders. I am Allison Dunn, your host of this podcast, and today our guest is Traci Duez. She is the president of CCR3. That is a company that helps other companies with performance management. She is also the owner of Breaking Free Consulting, and she is the author of this awesome book, which is Breaking Free, Leading the Way, Learning First to Lead Yourself. Traci, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, Allison, thanks so much. My pleasure.
Yeah. So could you tell us, you're the president of CCR3. What does that stand for?
Well, the initials stand for from fog to clarity, from quicksand to concrete, and then from idea to reality. And the 3 stands for all 3 dimensions, the heart, the hand, and the head of the human being.
Oh, neat. So clarity, concrete, and reality.
Yeah.
If I grabbed all 3 of those. And then the heart, the hand, and
Head.
the head. Okay. Fantastic. Cool. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have some kind of categories that I'm going to ask you questions on. And so the first one is about your book, Breaking Free.
Yes.
I love I thoroughly enjoyed this read because it's about our thinking and how some of our old thinking causes bad habits. So what are the habits that you find are the most common ones that hold people back?
Well, that's a really good question. You said you had some good questions, and I can answer. One of the ones I think that hold people back is just perfection. People think that they have to have everything exactly perfectly right, when in fact no one would even know if it was not perfect. Like when I started speaking in public, and I'd get up on stage and I'd have my slides or whatever going back there, and I'd get to a point where, oh crap, I forgot to say what I wanted to say on that last slide. Well, meanwhile, nobody knew that I wanted to say it, but in my head, there was this hesitation. And so sometimes that leads to another one, that thinking that gets people in trouble. And that's just self-doubt, right? Just lacking of confidence. And I think those 2 are kind of linked together. When you're a recovering perfectionist like I am, that seems to happen, right?
Right. Well, I definitely suffer from both of those. And it is hard to think on your feet to recognize that, like, oh, I forgot to bring that up, and I forgot to bring that up, and just continue forward and not allow it to stop you from progressing. One of the sections of the book talks about discovering what's right with you. And so I guess my question is, what is right about us that we most often overlook?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just on calls with clients this morning, and whenever I ask them, what's wrong, right? What's not working? Oh, it just keeps coming, doesn't it? I mean, they just have a whole list of things. And then I ask them, hey, what's right with you? And they'll be like, what do you mean? Like, well, no, what's good? What's good about you? And what I find, a lot of people try to compare their worst to someone else's best. And so it makes it really hard, right? So for me, I find that people tend to forget that they are unique, priceless, and irreplaceable, and just intrinsically valuable as a human being. And in being a human being, there's no right or wrong. You just are.
That is so true. Intrinsically beautiful. I love that. I might have to hashtag that one. I think that's a lot of my view of the world of, wow, that's so beautiful, right?
Yeah, well, and people will, if I get them talking about their kids or someone that they hold very dear, okay, if your kids don't make their bed, or they punch the kid down the street, or no matter what, they get detention or arrested or whatever, do you still think they're unique, priceless, and irreplaceable? And everyone's like, yeah, of course. They just made a mistake. Well, we don't give ourselves that same grace.
So very, very true. In one of your recent articles, you wrote about the upside of stress. And so I'm curious. I think that everyone always looks at like how stress is such a negative thing and it causes a negative mindset. So what is the difference between these mindsets, and how can someone form a positive mindset around the benefits of stress?
Great question again. Oh, you're good at this. So a lot of times people just want to get rid of stress in their life, right? Just get rid of it. Well, if you think about where stress came from, stress was good. When we were cave women, not that you and I were, but when we
I'm sure I came from cave women.
Right, exactly. When we were cave women, we would hear something rustling off in the brush, right? And we'd be like, "Oh, stress happened immediately." And so what happened? It gave us the energy to move and to get out of the way of danger, or just stand still or do whatever, right? But we had the energy to do that. And that's because we were in an immediate return environment. We heard the rustling, we went for a jog into the cave or wherever we happened to go. And then the stress was relieved. Well, now we're in this delayed return environment. So you get the email that says your boss is requesting you in her office tomorrow at 8 a.m. And you're like, well, what? Like, what is this for? I think I just got a good performance review. What's going on? But our body has this energy from this unexpected event, and we turn this energy into something harsh, right? Instead of saying, well, wait a minute, they want to meet with me, no big deal. And so stress is just our body's reaction to give us energy to do what we need to do or want to do in order to improve our situation. But a lot of times we think that it's, well, negative and it's kind of tearing us down. And if you just reframe it, I think you'll see that anytime you're feeling stressed, it's going to give you a boost of energy, not anxiety. It doesn't have to be labeled anxiety. It can be labeled energy.
For sure. So I can truly identify like that burst of energy and choosing to have it go, okay, like let's go do this, as opposed to catastrophizing it in some way, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Good
Absolutely.
advice. Nice little shift. You work with executive clients, correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
Do any of them struggle with procrastination?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites, right? Yes. I think a lot of that comes from what we just talked about previously, perfection. And yeah.
What are the kinds of things that you find that they're procrastinating over?
That really depends on their thinking and how they see their own value. Some of them see their own value in terms of, well, they've come up through the ranks, for instance. They see their value in the systems and the processes and procedures, and everything's in an Excel spreadsheet or something, right? And so they find that they may procrastinate when that system isn't exactly right.
Okay.
To whatever that means in their head.
Okay.
Now, some of them find their value in what they do and what they produce. And so if they have like a downturn in numbers, or they think they might, they'll procrastinate doing the things that can get them moving forward because they're afraid, right? They have that sense of doom, right? Yeah. And then others, they see their value kind of intrinsically in who they are, and they just want to inspire other people. And again, sometimes when they feel a little less than, whether it has to do with the business that they're running or something outside of the business that they're running, they tend to step away from the very thing that's made them successful and move forward, right? So they procrastinate in a variety of ways, but a lot of times just doing the things they need to do.
In let's just use that last personality or type as an example. What would be some of the tips that you would suggest someone do when they find that they're, I'm going to say, leaning away versus leaning into it?
Yeah, well, it's part of what we do, and we have assessment tools. That's what our performance management company does, and so we measure those 3 dimensions that are in our name about people. We measure their hands, which is basically their behaviors. What do they like to do? And many people have taken a DISC or a Myers-Briggs, something along those lines, right? And then we measure their heart. What is it that motivates you? And there's in Edward Spranger's work, there's 7 different motivators, anything from economic, which people tend to see, but also aesthetic and altruistic and theoretical and traditional. There's 7 different areas there that is more their heart. And then there's the head. We measure how you think and how you make good value judgments. And so when it comes to leaning in, you want to find the communication style, which comes from your behaviors, that you most like. You'll want to lean in more when you can see that it's adding the value or the motivator that is aligned with you. I was just talking to someone today, and they're like, oh, they're trying to grow their business, and they're going to their meetings and they're networking, and it's just so painful. And I said, well, what is it that motivates you? And she, I just love, I'm a high I on the disc. I'm inspiring, and I just love to talk to people. And I'm like, isn't that what you're doing? Oh yeah, I'd like to talk to big groups of people. Okay, well then why isn't that what you're doing instead of this one-to-one kind of, and just getting people aligned with their heart can help give them that energy to move forward and to lean in as well.
That's a great example, especially of the one-to-one to many, and where you get your inspiration from. You describe 3 classes of value that affect our productivity and our work. What are those classes, and why are they important?
Oh, you are just feeding it right to me, aren't you? I love this. This is kind of my passion, so I so appreciate this. I'm a recovering chemist and IT professional, so I'm like a nerd and a geek.
None of that makes sense to me, of what you just said, knowing you.
Really? That's
really?
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these 3 dimensions of value are my passion, because you probably wouldn't know me had I not known about these 3 dimensions of value, because I took an assessment and I didn't know how to trick it. There was a point in my life when every assessment my boss asked me to take, I knew how to, well, shall we say, manipulate the answers so that I gave my boss what I thought I needed, like to get the next raise or the next promotion or whatever it happened to be. Yeah. In the meantime, my self-esteem was really low, because I felt like any day now someone was going to find out that I was really a loser, just dressed up nice, and I'd be kicked to the curb. Those thoughts were really in my head. I know, it's hilarious, isn't it?
Yes.
So I found this assessment, and I had no flipping idea how to trick it, how to manipulate it. And so that's when I looked into this science called axiology. And so those 3 dimensions of value are hierarchical. And the lowest dimension of value is systemic. And this deals with the stuff we make up in our heads, right? The systems. So right, wrong, perfect, no need to exist. There's usually just a 1 or a 2, a 1 or a 0 when it comes to the systems that we make up. Being right is part of being systemic. And when the things that fall in this are also plans and processes and procedures. Again, speed limit, one other thing, fits into that systemic stuff that we make up. The key is to add and generate more value is to take the systemic and create something. So you take a plan and you create a product or something else that's measurable and tangible. Those are extrinsic. So that's your hands. Those are things you can touch or sense. And most of our lives, we're taught about these 2 dimensions of value, right? You go to school, you learn the best practices and how to do your math, and then you get graded on how well you scored on your test, and then you use that to, create something. However, there's a 3rd dimension of value, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, and that is the intrinsic. And it's great that we have a plan and we create a thing, but the most value comes in terms of what that thing allows us to experience as human beings. And so, we can create an iPhone. We have a plan for an iPhone. We create an iPhone, and that's worth, I guess, $1,000 now. Can you believe that? No. So, but why will people pay? It does not cost $1,000 or with some profit to make that, but they'll pay for it because of the human experience of it. Because grandma can watch her grandkids grow up from 3,000 miles away because of a little piece of plastic and some glass, right? And so it's the intrinsic part that is where we find the most value if we're looking for it.
Okay. And you were able to not trick this through a assessment test that you took. What's the name of the assessment? Is that part of your 3-3-RC?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Our CCR3 assessment has that as well. It has that part. And so it measures how you think. You just rank 2 sets of 18 items, and we can measure how you think. We can measure your thinking. I call them biases, but that has a weird connotation. But they're just the thoughts that sabotage us. Like the thought that says, "Oh, I have to be perfect when I'm on this podcast recording because, wow, everybody's going to see it and we have to be perfect. We can't make any mistakes." And then
No
we get
mistakes.
all off down another trail, right? So it measures the thoughts that sabotage us, but it also measures the thoughts where we have an amazing perspective and an amazing clarity when it comes to seeing how to generate and create value, which I believe is all of our jobs, is to generate and create value. And so when you start to learn to use your thinking strengths or your cognitive assets, that's when you end up being able to, well, used to be being afraid to be in front of people and speaking, and now that's what I do for a living, right? So, yeah.
You use the terminology axiology, and so I know neuro axiology is a good portion of your type of coaching, correct?
Correct. That's right.
Can you fill my listeners in a little bit about what that's about? I kind of feel like you just touched on it, but I just don't want to undermine that official term. It's a very savvy term.
Thank you. Neuroaxiology is a blend of neuroscience, of course, how your brain works, and axiology. Axio means value, and so it's a study of value, human value, and human value judgments, how we think and process value, and it's based in math. A lot of people think that it's a psychometric tool. It's not. It's a value metric tool, and so neuroaxiology is basically how your brain works, blended with how your mind works. And when you understand both of those, it's a lot easier to get them aligned and have your brain and everything else within you moving in the same direction.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like my mind and my thinking aren't aligned, if that makes sense. Where is the research coming from on neuroaxiology? Is it a university based? Is this your research you're leading?
It's research that I'm leading. I have other partners in a company called Axiogenics. We're doing that as well. And a lot of it comes from the basics of formal axiology come from a fellow by the name of Dr. Robert S. Hartman.
Okay.
Amazing life story he has. He fled Germany. He had a doctorate in philosophy, a doctorate in mathematics, and his JD. So he was like an attorney, lawyer, kind of doctorate as well. Just an amazing man. And so he blended philosophy and mathematics together to come up with this formal axiology. It was informal for many years, where he uses transfinite calculus and set theory to determine how we think, which is amazing. You don't have to know that to know how to use it.
I don't understand anything you just said.
I appreciate that. That's no problem. It's just math, right? And so the research behind that was done, a lot of it in the 50s and 60s by Dr. Hartman himself. And it is housed, I believe, at the University of Tennessee.
Okay.
You can go to Hartman, HART, institute.org and find that. I think it's at Tennessee.
Cool. Very neat. I have some motivation and productivity questions for you as well. Nice. Do you find that most of your clients have a clear sense of purpose when they come to you?
No.
How do we find
No, a lot of them don't, because it's, well, or if they do, it's not their purpose. It's the board of directors' purpose. It's their manager's it's somebody else's purpose. And so one of the things that I love to do, I have an online course where I take people through 7 steps, and the last 3 are creating your purpose, crafting, reclaiming your power, and crafting a plan. And so I say creating your purpose because a lot of people think that they find it. like they have to, like it's hidden somewhere. I'm not real sure where, but it's somewhere around here, and I have to go find it. No, we are in fact creators, and we create our purpose. And so I walk people step by step through how to do that. And when they see that their purpose aligns with their, I'll call it corporate or organizational purpose, if those two are aligned, it's incredibly freeing, because sometimes we think it's a battle and it's really not. And then it's also freeing when you realize they don't align, and now you know that you have to find another organization that serves your purpose.
You know, that's funny, because I was just about to ask you, what do you say to people to help them find their purpose, and they can't find it apparently. So what do you say to people to help them create their purpose?
Excellent. Most of our lives, we have been taught to focus on extrinsic goals. Like, I want to get my degree. I want to make $1 million. So you want some extrinsic, measurable, tangible thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, I have a Tesla because I wanted a Tesla, for crying out loud. Those are some awesome cars. And that's good. But those can easily be taken away from you. And so when you create your purpose, it has to be around those things and the intrinsic, the most important part of value. So who do you want to be, and who do you want to become? So yes, you can still focus on things. Okay, I wanted that car, right? And so who did I need to become in order to get that car? What are the attributes that I needed to be? So I needed to be more bold, or I need to be more determined, or present, or inspired, whatever those words are. And so I talk to people about always working on being just as much as they work on doing.
I teach that a lot too. So
Nice.
I think one of the biggest questions that I get is, how do I get and I'm going to use the word intrinsic because I think that is the key here, intrinsically motivate your staff, or get my team members to, be intrinsically motivated. Any tips there? I don't know that you can motivate someone else first and foremost, but especially intrinsically.
Yeah, and motivate means to make move, right? And I'm with you. I don't think that that's something that we can make people move. We can, however, inspire them, and inspire means to actually breathe life into. And so when and I talked about the assessment tool we use, one of the best parts about it, not the disc part, but the motivators part of it, is that you get to find out very quickly what motivates people. So what we tend to do is say, okay, let's say I'm motivated by reputation and money, which is economic. I tend to think that, I need to get you to do your job, so here's some extra money, right? I'm going to motivate you the same way. And in truth, that's not it at all. But when you understand how your staff is truly motivated, what really gives them energy inside of their own heart and inside of their own being, and you can provide a means for them to express that in their job, you'll never have to motivate them. They will continue to be inspired because you'll be breathing life into them by giving them that opportunity.
Yeah. I feel very blessed in every area of my life, and yet I also, I'm very driven, and so balancing the gratitude and being grateful for what I have, but also always, pushing the limits and stretching for not more, but the next level, I guess, is my best word for it at the moment. How would you help someone like me balance remaining in gratitude, because that always serves me best, as opposed to being so results oriented, which is a part of who I am?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like that. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I don't know why you didn't want to use the word more, but it is about more. That's what creating value is about. And it doesn't have to be creating a thing. It's about creating a human experience, which is the intrinsic piece of it, right?
For sure.
So being grateful for the human experiences that we have, so that we get the energy to move forward and create the next one, whatever that happens to be. And I just believe in delivering human experiences, no matter who it's for, or where it's to, right? And every coaching session to me, every speaking engagement, every time I talk to anybody, I want them to have an experience, whatever that happens to be. So being able to be grateful for the ones that you had, so that you can now experience even more.
Okay, I like that. Thank you.
Does that work for you?
That absolutely works for me. That speaks to my heart for sure.
Good.
My next questions are around what I understand you like to refer to as the tier model, and that is terminology that's pretty new to me. So do you want to describe the tier model, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, you can give it a shot.
All right.
I call it the tear model, though, like tear it up.
Oh, tear.
But it is tier as well, right?
Sad,
so
right?
I don't want you to cry, though. I just don't want you to cry. I want you to, if you learn this model, you're going to really tear it up.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to tear it up. So tear model is that our thoughts, which is the T, leads to our emotions, which is the E, which leads to our actions, which is the A, which leads to our results. So our thoughts drive our emotions, which drive our actions, which drive our results. Is that correct? Did I tear through that properly?
You tore that up. That's nice. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
What are some examples of the right thoughts that we should have to be able to cultivate that to create our best path?
Okay. I heard your question, and I don't believe there are right thoughts.
Okay.
I believe that each of us is unique human being. And so people say, oh, we must always think positive thoughts. Well, in fact, before we can be inspired to go to something, most of us run away from something. So when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. I never wanted to have that little money, right? And so I kept working and working to get away from that. So the negative actually gave me the energy to keep moving. I got to keep my butt in college, even though it was super hard, right? I have to do this because I wanted to get away from that. And a lot of people stay there, right? Stay in that. I'll call it negative. I don't believe that there's negative or positive thoughts either. I believe there's either action producing or action reducing. There's actually energy producing and energy reducing.
For sure.
And right? And so sometimes we need thoughts to slow us down because we need to plan, we need to think. We don't need a rah kind of thought. And so I don't know that there's a right thought. It's just really about, for me, going through the model that you very nicely explained, because most people, they see a result that they want and they just keep poking at the action level.
Right.
Go. You got to do this. I don't feel like doing it. Oh, but you got to do it. And then they try to use willpower to get it done. That is not going to work because the power comes from the emotion. Emotion is energy in motion for me in a human being. And you need to have the right emotional or energy level in order to take the action. Well, where does that come from? Well, that comes from our thoughts. But we've been taught, I don't know if you were ever taught this. When I worked in the corporate world, this was no place for emotions.
I was raised on that.
Yes. Yeah. And so there's no place for emotions in business. And then those very same leaders will say, am I the only one that cares around here?
Yep.
Right? Oh, well, listen, if you're going to stamp out all emotion and squash it down, then, well, you're not going to get the good or the bad, right?
Truly.
So that's what it takes. Well, the difference between where you're trying to go and then the emotional level that you have, that's going to be stress. And so if you can lift up your thinking and emotions and then move your actions forward, that's going to be what's best. And so the key is, what thoughts for you produce the energy and emotion that you need to take the actions. There's no right or wrong thoughts there, because I think every brain is different.
For sure. I hope I'm leading you into where I'm trying to have this go, but do you have any quick suggestions to help people focus on the right thoughts more often?
Well, of course, that's what I do. You're on. Yes, we want to. The best thing to do is to measure them, and the assessment tools that I have allow you to do that. And it's super simple. It allows you to rank 2 sets of 18 items from the best thing at the top to the worst thing at the bottom. And we compare that to the mathematical equivalents, which you don't need to know about, but we can find out, where do you think the best? And well, where are your thoughts a little wonky or a little unclear? Not only that, a lot of assessments, just you read them and you're like, oh, that's nice to know. Yeah, I kind of knew that. We actually teach you how to make that shift, how to shift into your best thinking, so that you can, from that perspective, create whatever energy you need to take the action to get to your results.
Yeah. We met in, I think, spring of 2017, a couple of years ago, and after a meeting and reading my Breaking Free book, I took the assessment, and we did a consultation. And from that consultation, I carry around with me, since that day forward, my centering questions for me to keep myself focused in the right thoughts more often. And so this has been incredibly impactful in my life, and I want to thank you for that, because I don't think I've followed up to tell you that, but it's been incredible. And it's something I carry around. I have it on my side door. It's something that when I'm struggling, I pull it out and I go, okay, what is the right question I need to be asking right now? So thank you.
Oh, I'm honored. That's very humbling. So that's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you find value in that. Absolutely.
I do. So I am kind of in our wrap-up mode, and I just want to find out, is there anything that you have as far as a particular motto that you use in your own life? I always kind of like to ask that question.
A motto, but yeah, and it kind of does what you were just talking about in terms of recentering yourself. Whenever I find that I'm really struggling with something, I always say, God, you have a problem. And I say that because it's not like God, no, I'm really talking to God,
God,
you have a problem.
You have a problem.
I believe,
it's like, Houston, we have a problem.
Exactly. But I believe that if I can just get outside of myself, and that's whatever God is to you, right? If you can just rise to wherever that is and look back down, you're going to tap into that wisdom that I believe is there. And instead of spiraling downward, you end up looking at it from a brand new perspective. So for me, that's kind of my motto, is just, God, you have a problem, whenever I happen to have one. And
that's a good one.
Yeah,
I like that. Thank you.
Sure.
For your book, who did you write it for, and what would you want people to get out of the book when they read it?
Oh, who did I write? I will let you know, I did not sit down and intentionally write a book. I had been speaking for 3 or 4 years, and almost after every talk, people say, oh, do you have a book? And I'd be like, no, I don't. And so finally I got tired of people asking me. So I truly wrote that book for the people that I speak to, so that when I say, oh yeah, here's a book. And what I hoped people would find, the value I hope people would find, was that they can break free of some of the habits that they have. My parents taught me from a very young age not to speak to strangers, because I was the oldest of 4 girls, and we would all go grocery shopping together, and Mom didn't want us to wander off, so I wasn't allowed to speak to strangers. And so my brain picked up on that, and that was a habit of mine, not to speak to strangers. And it served me so well as a 4-year-old. I was never kidnapped or anything.
Not once.
Right? Not even once, right? No. But as a 34-year-old director of an IT consulting company, it didn't serve me very well at all.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do, because I kept feeling like I was an imposter there, like someone was going to find out and kick me to the curb. And when I realized that I couldn't trick that assessment, I had to figure out what the assessment was. And so that's when I found this axiology. And in finding that, it was very liberating to me to recognize that I didn't have to keep thinking the same thoughts that I've always thought before. And so that's why in the book, I really hope that you can have hope that you can learn to lead yourself and do that first, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that our listeners know how to find you, where to follow you, what's the best way to keep connected.
Great question. I'm LinkedIn is where I'm at the most in terms of social media.
You're very
That's
active
where
there.
most of, they can definitely find me on LinkedIn, and I have a bunch of articles and links and things out there as well.
Okay, perfect. So Traci Duez at LinkedIn, yes? Is that what you're?
Yes, I think at linkedin.com/in/Traci Duez with an I.
Awesome. With an I. Traci with an I. Okay.
Traci with an
Cool.
I.
Traci, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Your gift of these last few years of the centering questions that are the ones that I need for myself based on what I need. And it's been very impactful. So I so appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate being here.
Okay, thank you.